Good morning and welcome to the BlackUSA.News Morning Show. My name is Donnie Glover, and we're joined today by Dr. Michael LeNoir and Monique LeNoir, and they're going to speak with us about African American wellness and the African American Wellness Project. Good morning, Doc. Good morning, Monique.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Glover.
So who do I go to first? I mean, Monique's, she seems like the boss, but your title says you're the boss.
Well, no, we're collaborators.
Yeah, I can go first. So I'm the executive director of the African American Wellness Project. And the African American Wellness Project has been around since 2002. And the mission is more timely than ever in that we work to address health disparities in the African American community. And we do that through a variety of different ways, resources, tools. And my dad could talk about his expertise and why he formed AAWP. But we really are excited about our mission. And we know that right now it's really needed. Especially in our society and among the Black community.
And you say especially now, meaning COVID?
Yes, well, health disparities have always existed, but especially with COVID, we know that a lot of minorities are, hesitant about taking the vaccine, but also they don't receive health information the same way that a large part of the other population does. So we're here as a trusted resource, and we want to get the word out about all of the truths around COVID, the vaccine, and other health disparities that African Americans suffer at a higher rate.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I think that she's absolutely right. We really started out of a rage that I had as a doctor about the way African Americans were being treated in the healthcare system. There's something called health disparities. Obviously, that's something that we have because of who we are. But there are also something called healthcare disparities, which is what happens to us when we enter the healthcare system and how that impacts on outcomes. So that, for instance, if you don't have the right, you don't get the right information, you don't get the right referral, you don't get the right procedure, and there's something called unconscious bias on the part of non-Black doctors, then it's going to affect your outcome. To bring it up to today, health equity is what everybody's talking about now. But we've been talking about health equity for the last 15 years. I was president of the National Medical Association, the organization of Black doctors. And we were always concerned about the fact that African Americans have more chronic diseases than anybody in our society. From the cradle to the grave, we're more likely to be sick and to die from diseases often unnecessarily. And part of that is because of some of the diseases that we do have. And some part of that is some of the things that we do. But much of it has to do with how the system takes care of us once we enter. I can't talk to one Black person who can't give me a horror story about some interaction they had with the healthcare system. Each of those interactions really impacts on your health outcomes. So what we do is we try to provide information on early detection, disease prevention. We try to talk about health policy, and we do it in a number of ways. My background is as an allergist, and immunologist kind of prepared me for discussions about COVID. My background as a broadcaster for 15 years with CBS Radio here in San Francisco and Pacifica Radio in Berkeley and various Black radio stations has given me an opportunity to learn that you have to communicate with people where they are. So we combine those two things, the information about how you deal with the system, the information about what you need to do to screen, and also we try to use every aspect of communication that's available to us. So we have radio programs, we have traditional TV programs, a PSA project that goes to 2,200 radio stations, 10,000 radio stations and 2,200 TV stations. We have a Facebook Live program with blackdoctor.org every week called African American Wellness Watch. And we have a newsletter. So there are lots of ways in which we try to communicate with the public. But our issue is to get you ready to deal with a system that's often unkind to African Americans. And I say on almost every interview that if we got as angry at a healthcare system, which is unequal in quality and treats us like that, as we do when someone cuts in front of us in the Safeway line, we wouldn't have this problem.
Wow, where do we start? Okay, so you're out in San Francisco?
Yes. Oakland. Wait. Oakland.
Okay.
I'm in Oakland.
Okay, because what came to mind as you mentioned San Francisco was William Leedsdorf.
Uh,
I'm a Black history junkie. William
uh,
Leedsdorf was one of the first Black millionaires.
yeah.
And
Well, yeah. There are several in that area. There are at least 3 or 4 venture capitals. Historically famous Black venture capitals in the San Francisco Bay Area.
right. Okay. So, as you were talking about health disparities, so many things came to mind. There's a book out, I believe it's called Medical Apartheid.
Right.
And it was one of the first books that I came across to detail some of the challenges that African Americans, Black folks face with the healthcare system. But when Monique first started, she alluded to COVID, and there is I think there are at least 2 or 3 perceptions in the Black community. Mine was kind of like wait and see, because no, I don't trust the system that gave us syphilis with Tuskegee. I don't trust the system that sterilized a ton of Black women in North Carolina. I don't trust the system that suggested Margaret Sanger is the health and wellness doctor for Black people to be following when it comes to babies.
Well,
I just don't trust.
yeah, that's all valid. I mean, and even today, African American women perinatal mortality rates are ridiculously high for a number of situations. But there's some fundamental differences here. One is in Tuskegee, they didn't treat us. They gave us something that didn't treat us. Secondly, we in those other instances, we were alone as an ethnic group. I think when we set up these shot stations here in the Bay Area, and you went to Black neighborhoods, all you saw was white people. And so consequently, a lot of other people are getting the vaccine. But that's no reason to make a decision like that. I think the decision has to make, we have to start and move up to where we are now in relationship to where we started 20 years ago. When the pandemic was announced, Black doctors, we knew there was going to be a trouble in the African American community because African Americans were the first responders. I mean, when they talk about first responders, they give out all this information on nurses and doctors, and they should, and we applaud their efforts. We're trying to save people under these circumstances. But the early responders, what Jesse Jackson used to call the early bus responders, people drove the buses, worked in the drugstores, worked in the nursing homes, janitors. They were the first ones to encounter this virus before anybody knew what it was going to do. So that's one of the reasons. The second reason is when it got to us as a community, we are less healthy than other communities for every single chronic disease. And the virus loves an unhealthy person. And so that was another reason. But as you started to look at it, several questions came up. In my own mind, the first question is, how did they get the vaccine so quickly? As an immunologist, I can tell you they've been working on coronaviruses for the last 50 years. And it's almost like if you look at various trees in the same family, they may be different in the branches, but they're the same in the trunk. So if you've been working on bringing the trunk down, which they have for SARS and other coronaviruses, it doesn't take long to make a vaccine that deals with the specific leaves. That I already have the trunk together, but they bring the leaf to make it different, a little bit more idiosyncratic, so that it affects a particular virus is not that hard. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the FDA process was followed. The problem with the FDA process, having done research myself, is that the process is too slow. I mean, they take a long time to get back to you. They take a long time to approve protocols. I mean, all of the same things that they did for this vaccine, they could probably do for every drug. But they mess around so long that sometimes you forget the drug you were doing research on. So that didn't happen this time. And there were a representative number of people around the world who had gotten this vaccine. And that meant that I think they had more than a representative numbers of people of all ethnic groups to look at this vaccine. I think the third thing is this whole issue of variants. And many people may not understand what a variant is. A variant is a mistake that's made by the virus as it replicates. And so it's a mistake in what the virus looks like. It's like I've been a doctor. I mean, we're doing a podcast. I've been in rooms you know, where I saw babies and I looked at the parents and said, and these aren't the parents of this baby. But so if a virus looks, this baby looked different. And that's the way the virus was. It just happened to have characteristics that allowed it to replicate more quickly, to be more infectious, and to be a bigger danger. The longer its virus stays in our communities, the more variants you're going to see, and the more sophisticated these variants are going to be. And finally, even after the vaccine, you know, lots of people got the vaccine now with very few side effects. Even for those people who are allergic, less than 1 in a million has any kind of allergic reaction, all of which were treated successfully. And finally, what is life going to look like for you if you're not vaccinated? You can say, well, this is America. You can get the Magna attitude. That's all, you know, I have my rights. But they're going to keep you from airplanes. They're going to keep you from football fields. They're going to keep you from seeing your favorite, from seeing me, see Frankie Beverly sing the same song every year. They're going to keep
That's
me.
Blasphemy. That's blasphemy.
I'm telling you, but I won't be able to do it. I mean, he'll come and I won't, if I'm not vaccinated, I won't be able to see him.
Okay, you said 4 points there, and I gotta walk it back a bit. My understanding is that the Food and Drug Administration, FDA, approved the vaccines under some emergency doctrine.
Right.
That it didn't go through the normal process. My understanding also is that the scientific method takes 5 to 10 years. But you said they were already working on the trunk of it. And so right. Is this virus safe? Is this vaccine safe?
The vaccine is absolutely safe. There's some certain myths about the vaccine. You can't get COVID from getting the vaccine. And most people who get the vaccine may have some 12 to 24-hour discomfort, but nobody's been critically sick with any of these vaccines. So you're right about the FDA process, but the FDA process emergency process was that they didn't have the numbers that they usually like to have, and they didn't have some of the percentages they usually like to have, but the core values looked at by these vaccines were taken care of and looked at in the same detail as they are for any other drug. What the FDA did is speed up its process.
Okay, well, but I thought you can't rush the scientific method.
No, that's not. The scientific method all the science had already been done.
Okay.
What was left was to see if the vaccine worked or not, and if there were side effects from the vaccine. So the science was done the way science is done. I mean, you can't rush science. But
we were guinea pigs.
Well, no, let's look at it. There are 4 phases when you do a research project. First, you have to demonstrate it works in animals. Then you have to work out, the details of the study on a few people. Then you do a large study, and then people analyze the large study, and then you reach out to people. So so by the time you get the vaccine, you got this vaccine, probably almost 1 million people had already had by the time they released the vaccine to the public.
Only got scheduled recently, Doc. I knew you were coming, and I felt a little more comfortable. And this is breaking news right here on BlackUSA News. Right. I got scheduled.
Well, see, here's the thing. By the time you got the vaccine, even the first people who got it in January, it had already been given to almost 500,000 people around the world. So that's part of the research process. Before they approved it, it had to be shown that it was safe and effective in almost 500,000 to 1 million people around the world. So by the time it was released, that phase had already been done. You were the 4th phase. You're in phase 4. Now you're working on phase 5. You're waiting to see what happens to everybody else.
Right.
So you're in the 5th phase.
The average person doesn't know this. We know white America, their institutional racism. Right. We know Tuskegee, North Carolina, and Margaret Sanger. That's what we know about them. So they have a negative credit rating in the Black community.
Yeah, well,
credit score is not even registered. It's so low.
Yeah, well, I think it's 8% of the African American community has been vaccinated. There have been 11 million people who have both had one shot. 6 million people are fully vaccinated. Only 8% of those are African American. It looks like in some areas, though, that is changing because people were waiting. But you're right to be suspicious. But what you have to do is to look at the information and compare it to those other situations. First of all, in one of the situations, they were not giving us medicine. That's what happened in Tuskegee. In some of these other situations, they were uniquely done, experimented on us, just us. But now you can see everybody's getting the vaccine. It's gone through a process. There's almost nobody's seen any major groups of side effects from it. And so consequently, I think you're in what we call a phase 5, because phase 1 is the rat, mice, and all of that. Phase 2 is calling out the science. Phase 3 is worldwide studies. Phase 4 is releasing to the public. And phase 5 is waiting for you to get the vaccine because you're looking to see what the general public is having. And that's fine. As a doctor, I want to be clear from our philosophy at the African American Wellness Project. We do not criticize or patronize people who choose not to get the shot. I mean, if they don't want to get it, I understand. I trust the judgment of African Americans. My only plea is to make sure you've got all the information that you need before you make that decision, because it can be a life and death decision. That's step 1. The second process is if you are not getting the vaccine, you make sure your uncle, your aunt, your grandmother, your grandfather, your father and mother get the vaccine if they're over 65, because their risks are much greater than yours. And you can sit there unvaccinated and maybe nothing will happen to you. But if you've got relatives that are over 65, 70, 75, then that's a whole different ballgame. And you need to read, as younger people, even if you choose not to get the vaccine, you need to make sure that your older relatives and friends get that vaccine.
Okay, Monique, why is the mission of the African American Wellness Project so important to you?
So the mission of the AAWP is so important to me because I have really lived this my whole life. I'm growing up with my dad as a doctor and seeing all the things that he's done in the community to help address health disparities has really kind of like brought me to where I am today as the ED of AAWP. We know that African Americans, as you just mentioned, do not trust the system. And what we want to be is a trusted voice for information around health, around COVID, not just COVID, but all health disparities. A lot of the resources that African Americans are provided are not from us. So this is for us, by us. We're a trusted resource. My dad is past president of the AMA, and he's been a doctor for over 50 years. And we really just want the African American community to be informed and to know how to take charge of their own health and advocate for their own health. Because in the past, not a lot of people have been out there fighting for our community as it relates to health disparities. And that's what we work to do every day.
So when did you take the vaccine, Monique?
I took the vaccine about a week ago. And she was hesitant. She was hesitant.
Tell me about that.
I was hesitant for all the same reasons that you mentioned, but I've been on a lot of these calls with my dad, and my dad has a lot of wealth of resources with other doctors. Hearing from them firsthand, I know that, this is something that is meant to keep us safe. And even though it may not be perfect, I don't think that it's going to be harmful to us in the long run. And I think the detriments for not taking the vaccine are going to be even more greater than actually taking the vaccine. So I made my own decision, but again, everyone has to make the decision that they feel comfortable with.
Well, I'm just trying to understand how you evolved, how your response evolved. What happened? I mean.
Yeah, well, one of the things, I have rheumatoid arthritis, and that's an autoimmune disease that affects your small joints, and it can be really debilitating. So for me, it's a pre-existing condition. I have 2 kids, and I want to be as healthy as possible. So for me, this was not something that I really had to think a lot about. Possibly if I did not have that pre-existing condition, I may have waited a little bit longer, but I already know like what it has done to my body. And that's why I've worked to get healthy. And I'm now a certified health and wellness coach, helping other people get healthy, because I want to be there for my kids and I want to be in the best health possible. So I made the decision for me, but again, everyone has to make their own decision. At AAWP, what we do is we work to get out all of the information to allow people to make their own choices, to advocate for themselves and to make their own choices. We want to provide all of the relevant, timely, and correct information. And then it's up to, everyone to take those words and that information and do with it what they want. But that's our goal, to really just educate and empower the African American community how to take charge of their own health.
Okay. Doc, I wanted to ask you about Africa. And I know this is not on the list that I'm supposed to go down, but worldwide, is Africa a hotspot for the virus? It's not a hotspot. Are they underreporting? And I have the same question about China. And again, I don't trust mainstream media. I look at mainstream media like this, like, what are you not telling me? So, still we hear people with the racist thing, or just saying they're calling it the Chinese virus, the Wuhan virus. They're saying China is underreporting. It's not reporting. So I'm trying to use the critical thinking. What do we know about Africa? What do we know about Asia?
Well, we know first about Africa that their pandemic is very similar to ours, except their resources are less significant. And the World Health Organization has taken on the continent. For some reason, there are not as many people dying percentage-wise in Africa as there are in other places. But the World Health Organization has Africa in its radar. So that's the first thing. I'm a little confused about the Chinese thing. I mean, I know there were a group of inspectors that went last week to Wuhan to look at the labs, but they didn't get all the information. And the assumption was that, well, it came from an animal to man. A lot of virologists are saying that's not characteristic of viruses that go from animals to men. Usually it's a slow process, not nearly as aggressive as this virus. So I don't think we still have the information on how the virus originated.
Doc, I saw something on YouTube. It blew my mind. It was people having sex with chickens.
Right. Well, yeah,
I saw it with my own eyes. That's the only reason why I mentioned it. I would have never believed it with my life. I saw it.
Now, did you watch the whole thing? Did you watch the whole thing?
No.
All right, I'm just trying to check. I'm a doctor, man. I had to check all this out. But no, when I grew up, my grandparents grew up in the hills of Tennessee, around the Smoky Mountains. And there were a lot of instances with sheep and other things, but bats, direct transmission from bats would seem that you just had to eat those, and people do eat these as delicacies in other parts of the world. So it was probably, human-animal interaction is not unheard of, but not with a bat. And so, you got to wake up late at night too. You got to stay up all night to deal with a bat.
I had to kill a bat when I was a little boy. I don't play with bats.
I understand, and that's a wise decision. But I think that the human-animal interaction, either through them being as food for certain populations or other forms of interaction, is not unheard of.
So I'm going to get back to the question.
The question still remains, though: did this virus originate in the lab? And I think it probably did. I tell you what? The smartest guy I know, he went to Georgetown. Now I know 2 really smart guys. Now I know 3. I know you. So one's a physician and one works. And we went to Howard.
I don't know. One is Dr. Zollicoffer here in Baltimore. He said weeks ago, take the vaccine. My other friend said, don't take the vaccine, no kind of way. He didn't trust it. Now, I haven't circled back with him, and I have to, but where is the voice, with all due respect to the African American Wellness Project?
Right.
if I hadn't have, if Monique and I had not connected, I'm just wondering how many Black people would not have a trusted voice. I trust you.
Yeah. Well, I think that if you look around, Black doctors have really been engaged in trying to talk to the African American community. You can look at a number of websites. If you look on television, here's the problem, and I'm sure you encounter that problem in communication. They don't. Radio stations and traditional forms of media don't have time for this kind of discussion. I was the medical editor for CBS Radio for almost 15 years, and we had a 2-hour talk show, and it was completely packed. I had another show on KDIA where we did everything from the nose to the toes. We had a doctor for women only, old bones. We had all kinds of doctors, and just getting the station to allow us to get on the air was difficult. And finally, and I'll tell you one final piece. I was at a large radio station when the AIDS epidemic started, and I had put together a series of 30 to 60-second messages on HIV. And I was sitting in the lobby of the station listening because they got the music on. And the song I remember they were playing was, "Do You Want to Be My Nasty Girl?" I know you probably didn't hear that, or you don't know the words to it, anything, but it's a pretty popular song. All right, so I go back into the station manager, and he says, "Well, these messages are too risque for my audience." The same audience where he's playing this music. So the outlets where African Americans get their information don't take their health information as a priority. Now we're hot right now because of George Floyd. So everybody wants to talk about health equity now. But I bet if you go into a crowd before this last week and ask who George Floyd was, they've forgotten. And I hate to tell it, I hate to mention it, but we back to where we were, and we're not as hot as we were during that summer where everybody wanted to do everything about health equity. And so consequently, we have to make a concerted effort to work with people like you who are out there communicating with blackdoctor.org. The National Medical Association has its own task force, has been around the country. I mean, we're doing it, we're talking about it. I think it just depends upon where you get your information. And if most people are getting it like for social media, you know what that means. I have a series of messages that I put on social media that I had to either design or have produced. All right, if I put them on Facebook, if I take my shirt off and pick up my grandson and go on Facebook, I'm gonna get 600 hits. But if I put a health message out there, I may get 14 or 15. I mean, so I think it's what the priorities are, what methods of communication are, and some people don't want to hear. And then there's a group of people who are afraid to get any kind of shot. We haven't talked about them. But I think that we Black doctors, I know Black doctors have en masse been out trying to give this message across. And we are still out there because our percentages are so poor. I can guarantee you, and this has been my experience, your friend who doesn't want the vaccine will be okay until he thinks he's got COVID. And he won't be able to get a vaccine fast enough. I've seen it happen. People talk about, well, I don't want a doctor, and then they get chest pain and heart attack, and you can't get them to the hospital quick enough. And get off liquor, biloba, and garlic, and they go in and get some mainstream treatment. And so I think that you have to challenge.
Hold on, we gotta get that again. You said some liquor and some garlic.
Right, well, that's right.
That's
well, my father, since we podcast or we're on StreamYard, my father said when I went into allergy, he said, Black people don't have allergy, they just drink and go to church. And so many people will get these theories and they're allowed to keep them. Let's go to vaccines, for instance, because that's where it all starts. African Americans have lagged with the traditional vaccines for years. The polio vaccine is 50 years old with a safety record and an effective record of almost 100%. Yet the last case.
That's the one that leaves the little circle on your arm, right?
And that's the smallpox. That's the smallpox.
Oh, that's smallpox. Okay.
Yeah, but the polio vaccine been around a long time. And Black people never got it in the same percentages. And when polio outbreaks took place, they got a number of the Black communities would get these polio, pertussis. The other thing, Well, and so you talk to family. Well, I'm not getting it because, I've read somewhere and I heard a song, or, it did something inside. Somebody spoke to me in tongues in the church, and I'm not going to get it. And they were able to get away with it. Why were they able to get away with it, Mr. Glover? Because everybody else was vaccinated. And so they knew they could walk outside, and they're not likely to encounter polio or pertussis or hepatitis A, because most people were vaccinated. That is not the case with this virus. We're just getting vaccinated. And so consequently, when you go out with your theory, you go out with your life in your hands. And I hear again, I'm not trying to be patronizing. I'm not trying to scare people. I'm just being real. That if you go out without that vaccine and into any large gathering, you are taking your life in your hands.
Well, that's just it. I don't want to be around nobody no way.
Yeah, well,
that was a joke.
Yeah, no, but look, here's what the pandemic has done. It's allowed you to get rid of a lot of those people in your life you didn't want around anyway. I mean, because you had to shelter at home, couldn't see them. They invite you to dinner, you couldn't go. Your wife's friends,
I'm from the old school. My parents said, don't bring nobody in this house. That was old school.
Yeah, that's old school now, but at least a year of staying at home, you could get rid of all those people you didn't like. And you don't have to get re-engaged when you come back out. But if you don't have that vaccine, then it's not like not taking the polio vaccine, not taking the pertussis, or the smallpox shot, or even some of the pneumococcal and all of there may be 15 now that you can get, because everybody out there is vaccinated. So you can walk around unvaccinated, and you're not really a threat to get it. So you're not a threat to anybody else. But that's not true. Only about 10% of this country, maybe 6% of this country, I think it may be 10 now, is vaccinated.
Monique, I know you got a lot to say. Come on, Monique.
Oh, well, I wanted to add a couple things. One, I did go to Howard, but I also went to American, and I wrote my thesis on how to develop an effective healthcare campaign for minorities and African Americans in particular. So we know that African Americans, we receive message differently. We have to have trusted messengers. The messages have to resonate, and there has to be easy calls for action. So that's a lot of things that we are trying to do through our campaigns, is we're trying to bring the resources and the tools to the African American community so they can be as informed as possible. One of the things that we did a couple of weeks ago, and it had a very small participation rate. We want to do it again. Maybe we'll have to go to Clubhouse or something like that. Is we did a virtual house call event where my dad, Dr. LeNoir, got on Zoom, and anyone could join and ask questions, medical questions related to their health. Because we know right now a lot of people don't want to go into a hospital or to a doctor. They don't want to go into a doctor's office because of COVID. So we wanted to bring the resources to them and have people just come on and ask their health related question. And we didn't get a lot of participation, not surprised. But again, this is something that we know in the African American community, people do ignore. We ignore our illnesses. I did the same thing. When I had my arthritis, I just kept going and going and going until I was on crutches and I couldn't walk. I just ignored it. I didn't go to a doctor. I was afraid to find out what was going on. And so as a result of that, my arthritis got a lot worse than it would have gotten had I just gone to a doctor. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to address these health disparities, these conditions early on, and educate and inform African Americans and other populations that you are your own health advocate and you have to take charge of your own health. And we're here to help you do that through AAWP.
So, Doc, if we don't take the vaccine, will the military get involved? Will I not be able to travel to other states, to other countries? Is this ID that comes with taking the vaccine going to be something that could divide this country like civil war?
Well, I'll say this to you. I heard the president say that the government's not going to do it. I mean, the government's not going to do it. He said you're going to get ready. You want to go, see your favorite artist. You want to go listen to a little jazz. You go to a little jazz club. The jazz owner said, "Let me see your vaccine card," and there's nothing you can do. I mean, that's a private business. They have the right to set up whatever criteria they want. I mean, so it's been demonstrated that if they don't want you there, if the Golden State Warriors say that we can't come into the Coliseum without us seeing your vaccination card, you can't go. I mean, it's not going to be a matter of government doing anything. The president already said they're not going to do that. If the airlines say you can't get on my airplane without a vaccine, okay, hey, that's going to be it. You know what I mean? And you won't be able to get on their airline. You may be getting on other airlines, but eventually, or if colleges, like Rutgers said, you can't come back to college unless you've been vaccinated. So it's not going to be the federal government that does this. Everybody wants to go to the federal government. It's going to be places that you want to go, and if you don't have that vaccination card, they may not let you. They may not let you in.
Well, Doc, I wanted to tell you that you seem to be a very blessed man. I have a daughter, and if she would help me 1/20th of the way that Monique helps you, I'd be a happy man. But on that note, what is next for you as executive director, Monique?
So we are actually in the process of developing various health initiatives. We already have a few health initiatives for seniors and for students, and we really just want to inform the African American community as much as possible about what we're trying to do to help everyone, especially minorities, advocate for their own health. So what's next for us is we are going to be having a series of webinars. We have a weekly Facebook Live that's streamed on our African American Wellness page on Facebook. We do that every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central Standard Time on various health-related topics. We also have a podcast, Black Doctors Speak, and African American Wellness Watch. And I can, share this information with you, and you can share it out to everyone watching today. But please tune into those programs because we have experts in all of these different medical fields talking about these specific health conditions that affect minorities at a much higher rate. So really what we're trying to do is use all of our digital tools and resources, go to our website, www.aawellnessproject.org to see all of the tools and resources we have available, and just trying to get the word out to all the minority population about, how so many conditions can be controlled and avoided and how they can advocate for their own health, especially as it relates to going to the doctor. Another thing that we're working on is a toolkit for consumers to be able to take with them when they go to the doctor to advocate for themselves and ask the right questions and know how to pick a doctor and how to get the best health care possible. So we have a lot of things in the works. I've only been executive director for 6 months now. So in this past time, we've really been spearheading a lot of things related to COVID and the vaccine, but these conditions have existed for years and they're not going away. And we know that if we don't do something about it at AAWP, no one else is. This organization is for us, by us, and we are a trusted resource, and we encourage all of you to tune into our programs, to our podcast, to our Facebook Lives, and to our website to get all of the best information possible so you can take charge of your own health.
I have another question.
Let me just say this. I have 4 daughters and 3 granddaughters. So, and each one has similar quality abilities. And each one is tough to... You got to, that period from 14 to 18. My dad was
a single parent for several years in our teenage years. He had 4 daughters. So, yeah, that's a lot.
So I have a lot more to learn. But here's a question for you, Monique. Your dad has implored your help, but, after you, there's this IG generation. They speak a language that you don't speak. So do you now have to reach to your children, your child, to help you penetrate the Instagram market, for instance, because that's where people are?
Well, it's funny you say that because this is a family affair. We have all of my nieces are involved. One of my nieces does a mental health awareness campaign on TikTok. Where she talks about different issues related to mental health awareness. Another one does a healthcare campaign around issues that affect adolescents. So we're on all of these platforms, and we're going to be on these platforms even more in the years to come. Instagram, Clubhouse, we're about to be on Clubhouse, Facebook, all of the digital tools, and I'm sure there's plenty more that I don't know about. TikTok, I'm not on, but my sons are on. So again, this is a family affair, and we're already looking at all of those channels because we want to reach the widest audience possible. We want to meet people where they are.
Now, Doc, I got to ask you this. I'm a dog lover. I have a German Shepherd. Now, I thought the dogs were emotional support for people. I'm getting reports that people are now supports for their animals. Have you heard this?
Well, no, I've heard that. Well, I know a lot more people are getting animals. I mean, for whatever the interaction is, I'm sure the animal's glad to be there, but I haven't seen much in the way of animals differently. I think that dogs especially are more sensitive to the feelings of the owners. And I think all of us have been in a bit of a funk for a year. You think what your life was like before COVID and places you used to go and the freedom you had to do what you wanted to do. And even if you've been able to adapt to the isolation that comes from sheltering in place and even being with your family 24/7, I mean, I think that they sense that something's not right. And dogs are especially sensitive to that. And I'm sure.
We just got a puppy, and I do not do pets. Like, I only got a puppy for my sons, and he didn't mess with me for the first couple of weeks because he could feel my energy. I tried to show that I was, in all in on this, but I wasn't, and he could sense that, So dogs are very intuitive, and I still can't believe that I'm a pet owner. But my sons were struggling, mentally, being home for a year, and after years of saying that I would never ever get a pet, we have one now. So it's a different world, and we have to really
like family.
Yes, well, now he is family.
Like
I had never growing up. I never had a pet because we were allergic. We all had asthma. So
my two granddaughters have a German Shepherd that they got about 6 months.
Smart, wise, short.
We have a dog that's hypoallergenic. He's a golden doodle. So because one of my sons has severe allergies and asthma.
So Doc,
what happened, Mr. Glover? When I grew up, it was just about 5 dogs. 5 different dogs. Cocker Spaniel, the German Shepherd, the Boxer. I mean, now you got a dog looks, and what I have noticed though, and we know how significant it is, that if you look at people and you look at their dogs, a lot of times their dogs look just like them. And so I think that a lot of times that selection process goes along with the whole thing.
Well, it's funny you should say that because my dog reminds me of my dad. He passed back in 2003, and as I'm climbing the steps, I swear, he'll tilt his head like that. And I said, damn, he looked just like my daddy.
No, but I think that we're seeing a lot of people having to adjust to the situation. And with the stigma of mental health in our community, a lot of times we don't go and get the help that we need. And so consequently, we have been an initiative to talk about mental health and to try to get you to give yourself permission to get help when you need it. And I think that animals probably sense that this is a difficult period for most humans to bring it back.
I've never really asked this question like this, but when you think of all that Black people have gone through in this country, from the Indians and indigenous peoples to our interaction with the Europeans, to slavery, to Jim Crow, to George Floyd, what do we need in order to just get to some modicum level of mental health okayness? And there's a part two. If you give me all of this regimen of treatment, will it matter if you don't give it to the Trumpsters?
Well, here's the thing. Let's take the first part first. I look at it from 2 ways. If you have a group of people, for instance, who survived the Middle Passage, who survived slavery, who survived Jim Crow and continued discrimination and racism, that's a stronger group of people, because the strong ones succeed where the weak ones fail. So I look at us as a stronger, more coordinated group of people, able to deal with this crisis. I think whenever there's a big crisis like 9/11 or earthquake, I'm worried because white people get scared, but we've been through so many things that I think we're carefully selected. I think our immune systems are carefully selected because we had to do all of the things that we had to do to survive these various and sundry conditions. So when we talk about our immune system, those African with poor immune system didn't make the Middle Passage, didn't go through slavery, didn't exist through Jim Crow. And racism also, that's one part of it. But racism is a constant health threat to Black people. I mean, and it may now get to the point where it's a threat for white people as they watch these videos of George Floyd. But racism is always there. We're always looking for it. It's always over our shoulder. It creates an underlying tension which makes us less healthy. So that's I think.
Well, I'm tired of that, Doc. Doc, what? I'm tired of that. I don't want to be unhealthy because the nut next to me won't get some help.
Yeah, well,
now, what do we got to do to get this nut some help?
And I see you done come full circle now. First you wasn't gonna get it. Now you mad because everybody doesn't have it. But here's what's going to happen.
I'm talking about the race.
I can guarantee you that the Republicans, 50% of the people will say they haven't gotten the vaccine are getting it. I can almost tell you from my experience as a doctor. I mean, even doctors who tell you what to do will do a different thing when they are the patient. I mean, and I can almost guarantee you that they say, oh, I'm not going to get it, but I can guarantee you they're getting it. And as more and more people get it and it becomes more and more available, I don't think you have to worry about them. I mean, and I think we as African Americans are going to be
not them getting mental health treatment.
Oh, but look, there is what is, man. There is what ought to be. I just don't see it happening in my lifetime.
Isn't there something wrong with somebody that scales a wall, that breaks into a Capitol building, that wants to lynch the vice president? There's something wrong with that's not normal. And if we did it, we'd have been shot dead like roaches.
Well, I think what you have to look at, if we get philosophical in that particular spirit, I think you have to look at democracy being an aberration. Most countries don't have democracies. Most countries have the very rich and the very poor, and they're run by very few people who make all the decisions. And so consequently, you're right in the sense that, there ought to be some way to do this. But I think when you look at the people that follow somebody like Trump, I mean, their history is replete with people following a strong man like that, con men. And in point of fact, that may be the rule rather than the exception. You think about how many true democracies there are around the world and how long they've lasted. And so we've lasted over 200 years. But what you see is you see a threat to the democratic process and you see a threat to democracy. I think we succeeded this time because we were able to get Biden and those two Georgia senators. But we were very close to an autocracy.
Well, see, that's what I want. This is the last question that I have off key. Monique said that we are a minority, or she was talking about us in this country. But worldwide, we're not a minority. They the minority.
Yeah, but here's the question I would ask you. If you look at the way things are set up, we're a tribal group. Human beings are a tribal group. We can't always count on people of color to be our allies. We can't always count on people of color to help us. I mean, you look at some of the ways in which we went into slavery was us selling us. If you look at violence in any community, Asian community, African American community, it's us killing us. And so consequently, I mean, to get us all together is a noble ambition. But for them to sit and that what you mentioned, that very reason is why the racism is so thick here, is that the average the average Caucasian is concerned about the fact that this country is about to become multicultural. And so what they're trying to do, Trump is the last white man standing. I mean, so they're concerned, even those that support us are concerned about the fact that this country is becoming more multicultural. And it threatens them. And then when they're threatened, when your tribe is threatened, you may not agree with all the members of the tribe, but you usually siphon on back to the tribe. So I don't see us changing very much.
I don't see them changing very much, though. Doc, they've been threatened. They threaten just because we look good. They talk about our skin complexion, and then they want to get tan. They talk about a lips, then they want to get needles in their lips. Everything about me that's beautiful, they want to tell me it's ugly, but yet they emulating it. I mean, so
I don't see nobody white. I'm sorry. I don't see nobody white wanting to not be white. I just don't see it. I mean, I remember a Samuel Jackson movie where, but no, I want to go to that. But look, I don't see them wanting to give up the privileged thing that goes along with being
Doc, the last I checked, we are destroying the world. Now, if we don't put our foot down, now we got to get the vaccine on Mars, and that's just going to be a problem for some black people.
Well, but I think here's what I think is going to happen. I mean, at the end of the day, the galaxies are all moving apart. The sun will burn up, the earth will burn up, everything. A black hole will take in on everything. I mean, so there's a finite period for human beings. But to get back to what you're saying, look at how you feel when you just think about it. I mean, why here you are early in the morning, we have the great conversation. I mean, and you're doing this for the public. And yet when you start to think about the racism, think about how much stress that puts on you just for that few minutes. You know what I mean? White people don't have to think like that. They don't have to think like that.
I know, Doc, you should see when white people come to my neighborhood and they drive like they don't know where they're going. Oh my God. Road rage. Why don't you know where you're going?
And they try to find somebody. I'm trying to find somebody when I'm lost in the black community who give me the right directions.
Well, see, they not lost, Doc. They looking for the heroin and the cocaine. That's why they come here.
Yeah, but you got to remember, Mr. Glover, though, that tension that you just expressed, the legitimate hostility you have toward that concept puts a stress on you this morning. You know, it's not anything that you're not used to. It may be not even as bad as it can get. I think wives can stress you even more under certain circumstances.
Well, Doc, I wanted to ask you. They say a wife will help you live longer.
Well, yeah. Well, will you live better? That's the question. But you may live longer. But will you live better?
I would hope.
But I'm saying to you, that stress just because of the racism you're going to encounter under almost any circumstances puts a strain on you. And it puts a strain on you because in the hospitals or in the medical system, if you go into the racism that's in the system itself, threatens your health. And if you're not organized, that's one of our basic principles, that you must be organized to take care of your own healthcare system. There are two doctors that wrote a book called For Your Better Health, and they tell you how to organize your own health system. But there are a lot of things that I could tell you about your own system that would make you uncomfortable. I mean, the fact that your doctor may not send you to the right place, that you may not go to the right hospital, you may not get the same test because you're black. And unless you know what to ask and you challenge the system, when you think it's not logical, then someday we'll have the prostate cancer discussion. But when you think about what the options are, I mean, a lot of black folk go into the system, they put up with any kind of stuff at the desk. A desk clerk with a 4th grade education treats you like you don't have any sense. You go into a doctor, he doesn't want to answer your question, doesn't even want to touch you. And then when you ask you, when you need a specialist, he sends you to his brother, who doesn't have, and done half the cases that have been done at the university. You have to be organized to go into the healthcare system as a black person to get the kind of care that you deserve. And that circles.
To add on that, Dad, when I had my rheumatoid arthritis, it took me 3 years to be diagnosed because doctors just wanted me to keep coming back to them, and they weren't trying to figure out what was going on internally. So I had to be my own advocate, and I had to keep pushing to find out what was going on. But it was 3 years before I found out that I had this diagnosis. So to your point, if I wouldn't have been my own advocate and kept on believing them, I may not have known today what the condition was.
Well, let me tell you who I also don't trust, Doc. I don't trust them dog doctors because they just wait for you to start crying, and then they'll tell you the bill is $700,000. They know you don't have that $700,000, and you got snot bubbles all in your nose, and you think your dog gonna leave you. That's stressful, Doc. The hell with the racists. Don't mess with my dog.
Don't mess with your teeth either. What about the dentist?
How about that?
You got to leave that dentist, man, with something that you have to get a mortgage for. I mean, but you're right about veterinary costs, healthcare costs, and I think people who have animals, it behooves you to take care of them and their health issues as soon as they arrive.
What can we do here to help you get the word out? I think it is so important, Monique, that we help empower our community. And I want to offer up this show. We're on Monday through Friday in the morning and in the evening. Whatever we can do to help, if it's a regular message.
We would love to do that. Come on regularly, once a week, and talk about different health issues that affect the African American community at a higher rate. We would love to be able to do that. We also encourage people to go to our website and sign up to receive our information, because we put out a newsletter, and we also have a series of digital tools there too. And then if you have like a list of people that you reach out to regularly, sharing our information so we can get the word out even more. We're trying to grow our audience. We've been here since 2002, but we've stepped up our game the past 6 months, and we really just want to get the word out about what we're trying to do and why it's so important, especially right now.
Yeah, we give you timely. We give you timely information. It's truthful and it's transparent.
Well, I started in 2002 also, and what that means for both of us is that we're headed into our 20th year.
Right.
And so next year, you and I both have to plan some 20th anniversary celebrations. And on that note, I want to tell you, Doc, Sunday night I copyrighted my second book, I Am Black Wall Street. It will be out before the May 31st commemoration. It'll be my second book. The first one, of course, is Unapologetically Black.
And where are you based? What city?
Baltimore.
Baltimore. Yeah, great city, great city. Yeah, but yeah, so we'd be glad to. Anytime you've got a health issue, anytime you want to discuss something philosophically from the health side, we'd be glad to join you and your audience. And any opportunity.
Too. If your audience has questions, health-related questions about any of the topics that we are sharing information about, we would love to be able to come on and maybe do a show where we have your viewers just ask us questions related to health and to the COVID.
What website can I put up for you?
Website is www.aawellnessproject, or let's see, is it aawellnessproject.org. We also are on social media. We have the Black Doctor Speak podcast. And so if anyone goes to Instagram, they can find all of our podcasts there. They're on Spotify. We have a website for Black Doctor Speak as well. But you can find all of that information here on our website, aawellnessproject.org.
Okay, Doc, we got to get one piece of wisdom for you before you go.
All right.
What did you learn from raising 4 daughters?
I learned patience. I learned tolerance. I learned flexibility. And I learned that you got to stick to the old school principles. Just the old school way. And don't be tempted to raise your children with this modern. You got to go old school.
I'm old school. I told my daughter, I'm not your friend.
Hey, is that familiar? I told her I met with all of them when they were 13. I said, I'm not your friend, I'm your father. I said, so that means when I say no, that means no. And if I say you can't do that, that means you can't do that. And if I say I don't want to hear it, that means I don't want to hear it.
One of the other things you taught us, Dad, was hard work. You always drilled this home with us. Hard work and education is the key to success. You told us that every single day. That this is not your home. This is where you're growing up. This is not yours. You're going to have to go out there and work hard for yourself. And you never gave us any special benefits or privileges. We had to work every summer. And you taught us that hard work and education was the key to success. And because of that, all of us went to grad school. And we all, have careers. And I think hard on us.
Since you're a finance guy, the other thing I taught him was an expression that I've used at Howard, an expression I've used at Harvard from Reverend Ike. Now, you remember Reverend Ike? He preached the power of money. He said, you can't help the poor by being one of them. And that was one of his basic principles. And I wanted my girls to hear that. But I did meet I did meet with them with 13 and said, I'm not your friend. I got friends. I said, I'm your father. That's a very different role. And so when I say because, it's not a concept. It means that what follows that is going to be the final decision. And of course, they snuck around, did all the same stuff. But at least I had some sense of make good grades and be home on time, because I figured if they did those two things, heroin was not an option.
You did a great job, Doc. I want to give you my mama's 3 rules. She left me 36 years ago, but I talk to her every day. Number 1, at 18, you're leaving. Number 2, don't bring no kids across that doorstep in the meantime. And number 3, own your house. She batted 4 for 4. I was a baby.
Oh, good. Congratulations, man. But we really enjoyed this, and please have us back again. I mean,
I promise we will.
It's just a prostate cancer and other issues that come up that are somewhat controversial.
And I'd love to come back on and talk about I'm a health and wellness coach, and love to talk about that as well. So, whatever you want to invite us, we'll be here.
And Monique, just for the record, I've been to your page, and I don't know how much you have paid these women, but they all claim that they lost 25 to 55 pounds listening to you.
Yep, that's the truth. That's the truth. I share, healthy habits for life, and I teach people how they can be healthy for the long term. It's no fad diets, no short term, trying crazy things, but really just practicing the principles of healthy habits so that you can take charge of your own health. And I've been doing that for 2 years, and I've coached over 150 people back to their goal weight and optimal health since I started.
Well, when you mention arthritis, I have to ask you this in front of your daddy. The old people say just get a pinch of vinegar every day, it'll go away.
And, I don't look. If they're old, I have to listen to them.
I wish it was that easy. No, I've been through the ringer, but I'm healthy now, thankfully, and it's because I took charge of my own health, and I got myself healthy at age 50. I'm 52 now, but at 50, I decided to be healthy. My best health now. When am I going to be? So,
Mr. Glover, we have a series of PSAs. I don't know if you got that series. Maybe Monique, we can send them to him, and if
sure.
they're only 29 seconds. They each reference a different topic. But we're also concerned about the COVID virus epidemic, is that people are ignoring their regular visits to the doctor, their regular screening procedures, the regular, taking their medicines and getting checked. And so we want to make sure that people, even if they have to do it by telehealth, take care of the other issues. Heart disease and cancer were still the #1 causes of death in this country. And we don't have a ticker of that, but that's still true.
Is there a network? I know here in Baltimore, there's a Black Doctors Group, but is there a national network where the Black consumer can go to find a Black doctor?
Yes, you can go on blackdoctor.org. That's the website. But you can really go to the National Medical Association site. The National Medical Association is the organization of African American physicians representing 30,000 African American physicians. It's based in DC, and they have a Find a Doctor list, which is pretty reliable.
Good deal.
Thank you so much. Past president of the.
All right.
I imagine. Well, if you ever want to run for president, Doc, I'll be right there to support you.
All right. I got to gain about 100 pounds, get me some hats, and play more golf.
Monique, you set it up. Are you pleased, Monique? We're good?
We're good. Thank you so much. Thanks for having us. Please go to our website. If you're interested in my health and wellness coaching, go to my Facebook page, Monique LeNoir. Follow me on Facebook. And we're here to really just inform the African American community, and we're happy to partner with you and continue to do so in the future. So thanks for having us.
Good deal. Right. Thank you for all of the enlightenment today. My name's Donnie Glover, and we will see you back tonight at 7 p.m. for Black Lawyers Roundtable. Keep watching BlackUSA.news. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.